The sun hung high in the sky, casting golden rays over the small playground nestled in the heart of a quiet Chicago suburb. It was one of those perfect afternoons where the air felt just right, warm but not too hot, with a gentle breeze rustling through the trees. The sound of children laughing filled the space as they ran around, their sneakers scuffing against the gravel paths and swings creaking rhythmically back and forth. Maya Johnson, an 8-year-old girl with big brown eyes and curly hair tied neatly into pigtails, was having the time of her life. She loved this playground more than anything else in the world. Her favorite spot was always the swing set, where she could pretend she was flying like a bird whenever she pumped her legs. Hard enough. Today was no different. With each push, she soared higher and higher, giggling uncontrollably as the wind whipped past her face. Her mother, Lisa, sat on a nearby bench under the shade of a tall oak tree. She watched Maya with a soft smile, occasionally glancing down at her phone to check messages or scroll through social media. But most of the time her attention stayed on her daughter. Lisa knew how much these little moments meant, not just to Maya, but to her too. Life had been tough lately, and days like this were rare treasures. The park wasn't crowded that afternoon. A few other kids played tag near the jungle gym while their parents chatted idly on benches scattered throughout the area. Everything seemed peaceful, normal, safe. No one expected what happened next. Officer Dean Parker arrived without warning. His police cruiser rolled slowly into the parking lot adjacent to the playground, its tires crunching against the gravel. He parked haphazardly, leaving the car angled awkwardly across 2 spaces. As he stepped out, his heavy boots echoed loudly against the pavement. His uniform was crisp, his badge gleaming in the sunlight. But there was something about his demeanor that immediately set people on edge. Dean scanned the playground with sharp, calculating eyes. When his gaze landed on Maya, something shifted in his expression. A flicker of recognition, perhaps, or maybe something darker. Without hesitation, he began walking toward her, his stride purposeful and deliberate. Lisa noticed him first. At first, she thought nothing of it. Cops often patrolled public areas like this one. Maybe he was here to ensure everyone's safety. But when Dean bypassed the other families and headed straight for Maya, Lisa's stomach tightened. Something didn't feel right. "Excuse me," Dean said loudly, stopping a few feet away from the swing set. His voice carried an authoritative tone that made Maya falter mid-swing. She looked up at him, confused. "Is your name Maya Johnson?" Maya hesitated, gripping the chains of the swing tightly. "Yes," she replied softly, turning her head to look at her mother for reassurance. Lisa stood up quickly, her heart pounding. "What's going on?" she asked, stepping closer to shield Maya with her body. "Why are you talking to my daughter?" Dean ignored her question, pulling out a small notepad from his pocket. "I've received reports of suspicious activity involving a young black girl matching this description," he said matter-of-factly, gesturing vaguely toward Maya. "I need to ask her some questions. Suspicious activity?" Lisa blinked, trying to process what she just heard. "What kind of suspicious activity? My daughter was just playing on the swings." "That's what I'm here to determine," Dean replied coolly, his tone dismissive. He turned his focus back to Maya, who now clung to Lisa's arm, her earlier joy replaced by fear. "Come with me, miss. We'll sort this out at the station." "At the station?" Lisa's blood ran cold. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Are you serious right now?" she demanded, her voice rising. "She's 8 years old. What could she possibly have done to warrant being taken to a police station?" "I'm following protocol," Dean said firmly, though his jaw tightened slightly. "If everything checks out, she'll be released. But until then, I need to take her in." By now, several bystanders had noticed the commotion and were watching silently from afar. Some exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene. Others pulled out their phones, filming the scene discreetly. The tension in the air was palpable. Lisa tried reasoning with him again, her voice trembling with anger and desperation. "You can't just take my child based on some vague report. This is ridiculous. Do you even know how this looks?" Dean didn't respond. Instead, he reached for his handcuffs, snapping them onto Maya's tiny wrists before Lisa could react. Maya let out a startled cry, tears streaming down her cheeks as she struggled against the restraints. "Mommy!" she wailed, reaching out toward Lisa. "No, stop this!" Lisa shouted, lunging forward to grab her daughter. But Dean held firm, his grip unyielding. "You're making a huge mistake." "This isn't personal," Dean muttered, avoiding eye contact as he led Maya toward his cruiser. "It's procedure." Lisa followed behind, pleading with him every step of the way. "Please don't do this. She hasn't done anything wrong. You're traumatizing her for no reason." But Dean remained unmoved. He opened the back door of the patrol car and gently, but firmly, guided Maya inside. Once she was seated, he slammed the door shut, sealing her off from her mother. Lisa pounded on the window, tears streaming down her face as she screamed for someone, anyone, to help. The other parents in the playground looked on in stunned silence. Some whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disbelief. Others recorded the entire ordeal on their phones, capturing every agonizing moment. None of them dared to step in. As the cruiser pulled away, Lisa collapsed onto the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Her mind raced with questions. Why had this happened? Who had reported Maya? And most importantly, how could she get her daughter back? Back at the station, Maya sat huddled in the corner of a sterile interrogation room, her hands still cuffed. Despite the officer's earlier assurances, no one had come to explain why she was there or what she was accused of. All she knew was that she wanted her mom, and that the man who had taken her away hadn't seemed to care about her tears or her pleas. Meanwhile, news of the incident spread rapidly online. Videos of the arrest went viral within hours, sparking outrage across social media platforms. Comment sections flooded with angry messages condemning Dean's actions and calling for justice. Local activists and community leaders vowed to support Lisa and hold the police department accountable. For Lisa, the hours that followed felt like an eternity. She contacted friends, family, and anyone else who might be able to help. Together, they worked tirelessly to track down Maya's whereabouts and demand answers from the authorities. Though fear and frustration threatened to overwhelm her, Lisa refused to give up. She would do whatever it took to bring her daughter home safely. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness fell over the neighborhood, the seeds of resistance were planted. What had started as an ordinary day at the playground had spiraled into something far greater, a catalyst for change that neither Lisa nor Dean could have anticipated. The night was long and restless for everyone involved, but especially for Dean Parker. After returning to the station with Maya, he had handed her over to a colleague who promised to handle things. He didn't ask what that meant, nor did he stick around to find out. Instead, he retreated to his patrol car, gripping the steering wheel tightly as he drove home. The weight of what he'd done hung heavy on his shoulders, though he tried to convince himself it wasn't his fault. When he walked through the front door of his house, Karen, his wife of 10 years, was waiting for him in the living room. She sat on the couch, her arms crossed, staring at the TV screen. Local news footage of the playground incident played on repeat, showing grainy clips of Dean handcuffing Maya and leading her to his cruiser. Lisa's anguished cries echoed faintly from the speakers. When Karen heard the door close behind Dean, she turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "What happened today?" she asked flatly, her voice laced with both anger and disbelief. Dean sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "It's not what it looks like," he began defensively, dropping his keys onto the kitchen counter. "I got a call about suspicious activity involving a young black girl. I followed protocol." Karen stared at him, her lips pressed into a tight line. "Protocol? That's your excuse? You dragged an 8-year-old child away from her mother in front of half the neighborhood because of some vague report? Are you serious right now?" "It's not vague," Dean snapped, his patience wearing thin. "These reports come in all the time. People see something, they call it in. It's my job to investigate." "Your job?" Karen shot back, standing up now. Her voice rose slightly, trembling with emotion. Your job is to protect people, not terrorize them. Did you even stop to think about what you were doing? About how wrong this feels? Dean opened his mouth to argue, but hesitated. For a moment, guilt flickered across his face, but he quickly masked it with irritation. You don't understand the pressure we're under, he muttered, pacing back and forth. There are procedures, rules we have to follow. If I ignore a report like this, someone higher up will come down hard on me. They'll say I wasn't doing my duty. So you just throw innocent kids into the back of your car instead? Karen demanded, throwing her arms up in frustration. Is that what being a cop means now? Arresting children because of the color of their skin? Dean froze mid-step, his jaw tightening. That has nothing to do with it, he said sharply, though his tone lacked conviction. This isn't about race. This is about following orders. Karen shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. You can lie to yourself all you want, Dean, but don't expect me to believe it. What you did today was cruel. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're not the man I thought you were. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut, leaving him speechless. He wanted to defend himself, to explain why he'd acted the way he did, but deep down, he knew there was no justification that would make this okay. Not really. So instead he turned away, retreating to the solitude of their bedroom where he could avoid facing the truth, for now. Across town, Lisa Johnson sat hunched over her dining table, surrounded by friends and family who had rushed to her side after hearing about Maya. The house buzzed with quiet conversations and whispered reassurances, but Lisa barely registered any of it. Her mind was consumed with thoughts of her daughter, alone and scared in some cold, impersonal police station. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Maya's tear-streaked face as she reached out for her, screaming for help. Marcus Green, a longtime friend and community organizer, leaned forward in his chair, placing a gentle hand on Lisa's shoulder. We're going to get her back, he said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling around them. But we need to stay calm and focused. Panicking won't help Maya. Lisa nodded weakly, wiping her damp cheeks with the sleeve of her sweater. I know, she whispered, though her voice cracked. But every second she's gone feels like I'm losing her forever. You're not losing her, Marcus assured her, squeezing her shoulder reassuringly. We're going to fight for her, together. Around the table, others chimed in with ideas and offers of support. Some suggested contacting lawyers or filing complaints against the police department. Others talked about organizing protests to draw attention to the injustice. Everyone agreed on one thing. They couldn't let this slide. What had happened to Maya wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern of systemic racism and abuse of power that needed to be addressed. As the discussion continued, Lisa's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and saw an unknown number flashing. Hesitantly, she picked it up and answered. Hello? Ms. Johnson? Came a hesitant male voice on the other end. This is Officer Reynolds from the Chicago Police Department. I'm calling about your daughter. Lisa's heart leapt into her throat. Where is she? She demanded, her voice sharp with urgency. Is she okay? She's fine, Officer Reynolds replied quickly. She's here at the station, safe. We've processed her release and you can pick her up whenever you're ready. Lisa exhaled, in relief, tears streaming down her face once again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Thank you, she choked out. I'll be there as soon as I can. After hanging up, she relayed the news to the group. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, followed by murmurs of encouragement. Marcus grabbed his coat. I'll drive you, he offered. You shouldn't go alone. Lisa nodded gratefully, gathering her things as quickly as her shaking hands would allow. Within minutes, they were on the road, speeding toward the station. The drive felt endless, each passing second stretching longer than the last. When they finally arrived, Lisa practically sprinted inside, her eyes scanning the lobby until she spotted Maya sitting on a bench near the entrance. Maya looked small and fragile, her usual spark dimmed by exhaustion and fear. But when she saw her mother, her face lit up, and she ran into Lisa's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Lisa held her tightly, rocking her back and forth as she whispered soothing words into her ear. "It's okay, baby," she murmured. "You're safe now. Mommy's here." For several minutes, neither of them moved. They simply clung to each other, drawing strength from the embrace. Eventually, Marcus approached cautiously, giving them space but offering a reassuring smile. "Let's get you two home," he said softly. On the ride back, Maya fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting against the window. Lisa watched her silently, her heart aching with love and protectiveness. She vowed then and there that she wouldn't let anyone hurt her daughter ever again. Not the police, not anyone. Back at home, Lisa tucked Maya into bed, brushing stray curls off her forehead and kissing her goodnight. As she turned off the light and closed the bedroom door, she felt a surge of determination wash over her. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Tomorrow they would begin the fight, not just for justice, but for change. The next morning brought a strange unease to the Parker household. Dean woke up groggy and disoriented, his mind still clouded with fragments of restless dreams. He shuffled into the kitchen, where Karen was already seated at the table, sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone. The tension between them was thick, lingering from their argument the night before. Neither spoke as Dean poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, staring out the window. Outside, the neighborhood seemed quiet, too quiet. It wasn't until he noticed the black SUV parked across the street that his stomach dropped. At first glance, it looked like any other vehicle, but something about it felt off. The windows were tinted so darkly that it was impossible to see inside, and the license plate was obscured by mud. Dean frowned, gripping his mug tighter. "What's that car doing there?" he muttered under his breath. Karen glanced up from her phone, following his gaze. "What car?" she asked, peering out the window. When she spotted the SUV, her brow furrowed. "I don't know. It wasn't there when I came downstairs earlier." Dean didn't respond. Instead, he turned away and started pacing, his mind racing with possibilities. Had someone seen what happened yesterday? Was this some kind of retaliation? Or worse, had someone higher up sent people to question him further? Before he could dwell on it too long, there was a sharp knock at the door. Both Dean and Karen froze, exchanging uneasy looks. "Who is it?" Karen whispered, though she knew Dean wouldn't have an answer. "I'll check," Dean said gruffly, setting his coffee down. He walked to the front door and opened it cautiously, only to find two men standing on the porch. They wore identical dark suits, their expressions unreadable. One of them flashed a badge quickly before slipping it back into his pocket. "Agent Harris," he introduced himself in a clipped tone. "This is Agent Cole. We need to speak with you." Dean's heart skipped a beat. "About what?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. "It's better if we discuss this inside," Agent Harris replied smoothly, glancing past Dean into the house. For a moment, Dean hesitated. Letting strangers, especially ones who looked like government agents, into his home felt like a bad idea, but refusing would only make things worse. Reluctantly, he stepped aside and gestured for them to enter. Karen watched silently as the two men walked in, their polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. She stood up from the table, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. "What's going on?" she demanded, her voice tinged with suspicion. Agent Harris ignored her, focusing instead on Dean. "We'd prefer to speak privately," he said, his tone firm but polite. "No," Karen interjected firmly. "Whatever you have to say, you can. Say in front of me. I'm his wife." The agents exchanged a brief glance before Agent Cole shrugged slightly. "Fine," Agent Harris conceded, though his expression hardened. He turned back to Dean. "We're here regarding your actions yesterday involving the minor Maya Johnson." Dean stiffened, his jaw tightening. "I was following protocol," he insisted defensively. "If anyone has a problem with how I handled the situation, they can take it up with my superiors." "That won't be necessary," Agent Harris said coolly. "We're not here on behalf of the police department. We represent a different organization. one concerned with matters of national security. National security? Dean blinked, caught off guard. What does that have to do with me arresting a child? It has everything to do with it, Agent Cole chimed in, speaking for the first time. His voice was low and measured, carrying an unsettling weight. You acted without authorization, Officer Parker. That girl was flagged for monitoring, not detainment. Your decision to escalate the situation has compromised sensitive operations. Flagged for monitoring? Karen interrupted, her eyes widening in disbelief. What are you talking about? She's just a kid. Agent Harris shot, her a warning look. Mrs. Parker, please let us finish. This is far more complicated than it appears. Dean's mind raced as he tried to process what they were saying. Monitoring? Operations? None of it made sense. Look, he said finally, his voice tinged with frustration. I don't know anything about monitoring or operations. All I did was respond to a report. If there's some bigger picture here, no one told me about it. That's precisely the issue, Agent Cole said, stepping closer. You weren't supposed to act at all. By taking matters into your own hands, you've drawn unwanted attention to an ongoing investigation. What investigation? Dean snapped, his patience wearing thin. And why would anyone monitor an 8-year-old girl? The agents exchanged another glance, their silence speaking volumes. Finally, Agent Harris sighed. Let's just say certain individuals within marginalized communities are being tracked for potential threats. It's a precautionary measure, designed to maintain public safety. Potential threats? Karen exclaimed, her voice rising. Are you serious right now? You're accusing children of being threats? This is insane. We're not accusing anyone of anything, Agent Harris replied calmly, though his tone carried an edge. We're simply gathering intelligence. Unfortunately, thanks to Officer Parker's impulsive actions, that process has been disrupted. Dean felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He hadn't signed up for this. He was just a cop trying to do his job, not some pawn in a shadowy government scheme. So what happens now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That depends on you, Agent Cole said ominously. We'll need full cooperation moving forward. Any information you gathered during your encounter with Maya Johnson must be handed over immediately. Additionally, you are to cease all communication about this matter with anyone outside this room. And if I don't? Dean challenged, though his voice lacked confidence. Agent Harris smiled thinly. Then we'll have no choice but to consider you a liability. And liabilities tend to disappear. The threat hung in the air like a storm, cloud, suffocating and inescapable. Dean swallowed hard, his throat dry. Beside him, Karen looked pale, her hands trembling slightly. Neither of them dared to argue further. After a few tense moments, Agent Harris nodded toward the door. We'll be in touch, he said simply, turning to leave. Agent Cole followed close behind, his expression unreadable. When the door clicked shut behind them, the silence in the house was deafening. Karen sank onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. What have you gotten us into, Dean? She whispered, her voice shaking. Dean didn't answer. He couldn't. All he could think about was the black SUV still parked outside, and whether its occupants were truly gone. Across town, Lisa and Maya were starting their day with quiet determination. After a restless night filled with nightmares, Maya had woken up subdued but resilient. Lisa marveled at her daughter's strength even as she vowed to shield her from further harm. Together they ate breakfast in relative silence, the events of the previous day looming heavily over them. Later that morning, Marcus arrived at their doorstep, carrying a stack of papers and a laptop. I've been digging into this, he explained as he set everything down on the dining table. Something doesn't add up. Why would a routine call about suspicious activity lead to such extreme measures? There's more going on here than meets the eye. Lisa listened intently as Marcus laid out his findings. He had spent hours combing through public records and news articles, piecing together patterns of similar incidents involving law enforcement and minority communities. Each case pointed to a disturbing trend of surveillance and profiling, but none of them mentioned anything about national security, or covert investigations. This isn't just about racism, Marcus concluded, grimly. It's systemic. Someone is using fear and prejudice to justify targeting innocent people. And Maya got caught in the crossfire. Lisa felt a surge of anger mixed with helplessness. But why her? She's just a child. What could they possibly gain from watching her? Marcus shook his head. I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's big. Too big for them to let us expose it easily. As they talked, Maya wandered into the backyard, her curiosity piqued by a patch of loose soil near the garden. She knelt down and began digging absent-mindedly, her fingers brushing against something hard beneath the dirt. Frowning, she pulled it free, a small metallic device no larger than a coin. It gleamed dully in the sunlight, its surface etched with strange symbols. "Mom!" Maya called out, holding up the object. "What's this?" Lisa hurried outside, her heart pounding as she examined the device. It didn't look like anything ordinary, certainly not something a child should find buried in their yard. Without hesitation, she called Marcus over. When he saw it, his eyes widened. "Where did you find this?" he asked sharply, taking the device from Maya's hand. "In the ground," Maya replied innocently. "Is it important?" Marcus didn't answer, right away. Instead, he studied the object closely, his mind racing. Whatever it wasn't meant to be found, and if whoever planted it realized it was missing. "We need to keep this safe," Marcus said finally, his voice low. "And we need to figure out exactly what it is, because I think it might hold the key to everything." The metallic device sat on the dining table, glinting faintly under the overhead light. Lisa, Marcus, and Maya gathered around it, their faces tense with a mix of curiosity and unease. None of them had ever seen anything like it before. Its smooth surface was etched with intricate patterns that seemed almost alien. There were no buttons or visible seams, just those strange symbols that spiraled across its edges. "What do you think it is?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached out hesitantly, but stopped herself from touching it. Something about the object felt wrong. Marcus frowned, leaning closer to inspect it. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whoever buried it here didn't want it found. That much is clear." Maya tilted her head, peering at the device with wide eyes. "Do you think it's magic?" she asked innocently. Lisa forced a small smile. "No, baby, I don't think it's magic." But deep down, she wasn't so sure. The whole situation felt surreal, like something out of a movie. First, the arrest, then the mysterious agents showing up at Dean's house, and now this, whatever this was. Marcus pulled out his phone and snapped several photos of the device from different angles. "I'll send these to a friend of mine who works in tech," he said. "He might be able to figure out what it does, or at least where it came from." "Do you think it has something to do with those men who talked to Officer Parker?" Lisa asked, her brow furrowing. "The ones in suits?" "It's possible," Marcus replied thoughtfully. "If they're part of some kind of surveillance program, maybe this is one of their tools. A tracker or a listening device, maybe." Lisa shuddered at the thought. "You mean someone was spying on us? On my daughter?" "I don't know for sure," Marcus said carefully. "But we can't rule it out. Whoever planted this thing wanted to keep tabs on something, or someone. And given everything that's happened, it's not hard to guess who that someone might be." Lisa glanced at Maya, who was sitting quietly beside her, clutching a stuffed animal tightly to her chest. Her heart ached at the thought of anyone watching her little girl, let alone planting devices in their yard. What could an 8-year-old possibly have done to warrant such attention? "We need to be careful," Marcus continued, lowering his voice. "If this thing belongs to whoever sent those agents, then taking it means we've crossed a line. They might come looking for it." Lisa swallowed hard, her stomach churning. "What should we do?" "For now, we keep it hidden," Marcus said firmly. "And we don't tell anyone, not even close friends or family, that we found it. The fewer people who know about this, the better." Lisa nodded, though fear gnawed at her insides. Keeping secrets had never been her strong suit, and the weight of this one already felt overwhelming. Still, she knew Marcus was right. If they wanted to protect Maya and themselves, they couldn't afford any slip-ups. Meanwhile, across town, Dean Parker was having a very different kind of morning. After the unsettling visit from Agents Harris and Cole, he hadn't slept a wink. Every creak of the house, every car passing by outside, made him jump. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Karen noticed his growing paranoia and tried to reassure him. "They're gone now," she said gently as they sat together in the living room. "There's nothing more they can do." "You don't understand," Dean muttered, staring blankly at the wall. "These aren't ordinary people. They're not bound by laws or rules. If they decide you're a problem, they'll make you disappear." Karen sighed, rubbing her temples. "Then maybe you should talk to someone, a lawyer, a union rep, anyone who can help you figure this out." Dean shook his head vehemently. "No lawyers. If I involve anyone else, it'll only make things worse. Those agents made that perfectly clear." Karen bit her lip, unsure how to respond. She hated seeing her husband like this, so defeated, so afraid. It was as if the man she'd married had vanished overnight, replaced by a shadow of his former self. But there was nothing she could do to fix it, not unless he was willing to fight back. As the day wore on, Dean became increasingly restless. He paced the house, checked the locks repeatedly, and peeked through the curtains every few minutes to see if the black SUV was still parked outside. To his relief, it was gone. But that didn't ease his anxiety. If anything, it made him more suspicious. Had they left because they got what they needed, or were they simply biding their time? By late afternoon, Dean couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door, ignoring Karen's protests. "Where are you going?" she called after him. "To clear my head," he snapped without looking back. Truthfully, he didn't know where he was going. All he knew was that he needed to get out of the house, away from the suffocating walls and the memories of yesterday's confrontation. Maybe driving aimlessly would help him think. He ended up at a quiet park on the outskirts of town, far from prying eyes. As he walked along the deserted trails, he replayed the events of the past 2 days in his mind. Arresting Maya had been a mistake, a colossal one. He could see that now, even if he hadn't been ready to admit it before. But what choice did he have? He'd been following orders, doing what he thought was expected of him. How was he supposed to know it would spiral into something so much bigger? Lost in thought, Dean didn't notice the 2 men approaching until they were standing directly in front of him. At first, he assumed they were joggers or fellow walkers, but when they stopped and stared at him, his blood ran cold. They were dressed casually, jeans, hoodies, sneakers, but their expressions were anything but friendly. "Officer Parker," one of them said, his voice low and menacing. "We need to have a word with you." Dean took a step back, his pulse racing. "Who are you?" he demanded, though he already suspected the answer. "No one you need to worry about," the second man replied with a smirk. "Just friends of Agent Harris and Agent Cole. They asked us to deliver a message." Dean's throat went dry. "What message?" The first man stepped closer, invading Dean's personal space. "Keep your mouth shut," he growled. "About everything. If you breathe a word of what happened to anyone, even your wife, will know. And trust me, you won't like the consequences." Dean opened his mouth to argue, to protest, but no words came out. Instead, he stood frozen, his body trembling with fear. The men exchanged satisfied smirks before turning and walking away, leaving Dean alone on the trail. When he finally mustered the courage to move again, he stumbled back to his car, his mind reeling. Who were these people? What did they want from him? And most importantly, how could he possibly escape their grasp? Back at Lisa's house, Marcus received a text from his tech-savvy friend. The message was short but alarming. "This isn't standard tech. Looks military grade. Be careful." Marcus showed the text to Lisa, who paled at the news. "Military grade?" she whispered. Why would they use something like that on us? Because they're serious, Marcus replied grimly. And they're not playing around. Whatever this program is, it's big. Bigger than we realized. Lisa hugged Maya tightly, her protective instincts kicking into overdrive. We're not letting them near her again, she vowed. Not ever. Marcus nodded, determination, hardening his features. Then we need to start fighting back. Starting tomorrow, we go public. We expose this thing for what it is, and we make sure everyone knows the truth. Lisa hesitated, fear warring with resolve. Going public meant risking everything, their safety, their privacy, their lives. But staying silent meant letting the system win, and that was something neither of them could accept. Okay, she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Let's do it. The morning sun rose over the city, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. It was a new day. But for Lisa Johnson and Marcus Green, it felt like the calm before a storm. They had spent hours preparing for what lay ahead, knowing that once they went public with their findings, there would be no turning back. The metallic device Maya had found still sat on the dining table, wrapped carefully in a cloth to avoid drawing attention. Its presence weighed heavily on them, a silent reminder of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. Lisa woke up early, her mind racing with thoughts of what might happen next. She checked on Maya, who was sleeping peacefully in her bed, unaware of the turmoil swirling around her. Lisa brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, her heart swelling with love and determination. Whatever it took, she would protect Maya, even if it meant putting herself in harm's way. Marcus arrived shortly after sunrise, carrying a laptop and a stack of printed documents. We need to move quickly, he said as he set everything down on the table. If we wait too long, someone might catch wind of what we're doing. Lisa nodded, pulling out a chair. What's the plan? We start by releasing the photos of the device online, Marcus explained. I'll post them along with a detailed explanation of where it was found and why we believe it's connected to the incident at the playground. Then I'll reach out to journalists and activists who can help amplify our message. And what about Dean? Lisa asked, her voice tinged with anger. Shouldn't people know about him? About how he treated Maya? Marcus hesitated, considering her words. We can mention him, but we need to focus on the bigger picture. This isn't just about one racist cop. It's about exposing the system that allowed this to happen. If we frame it right, we can turn this into a movement. Lisa agreed reluctantly, though part of her wanted nothing more than to see Dean held accountable for his actions. Still, she understood Marcus's point. Going after one man wouldn't fix the problem. They needed to shine a light on the entire operation, the surveillance, the profiling, the injustice. As they worked together, piecing together statements and gathering evidence, Maya wandered into the room, rubbing her sleepy eyes. What are you guys doing? She asked curiously. We're telling everyone about what happened to you, Lisa replied softly, kneeling down to meet her daughter's gaze. About how unfair it was, and how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Maya frowned, clutching her stuffed bunny tightly. Will it stop the bad people? Lisa forced a smile, hoping to reassure her. Yes, baby. That's exactly what we're trying to do. By mid-morning, Marcus uploaded the first post to social media. Within minutes, it began spreading like wildfire. People were outraged by the photos of the mysterious device and even more furious when they learned about its connection to Maya's arrest. Comments poured in from all over the country, many expressing support for Lisa and calling for justice. Others demanded answers from local authorities and government agencies. Journalists soon picked up the story, reaching out to Marcus for interviews. He handled each call with care, emphasizing the importance of exposing systemic racism and abuse of power. This isn't just about one child or one officer, he told a reporter during a live segment. It's about holding institutions accountable and ensuring that no family has to go through what the Johnsons did. As the news gained traction, protests began forming outside police headquarters and government buildings. Signs reading, "Justice for Maya" and "Stop Racial Profiling" filled the streets. carried by angry yet determined crowds. Community leaders joined the demonstrations, using megaphones to rally support and demand transparency. But not everyone was pleased with the growing movement. Back at Dean Parker's house, things were spiraling out of control. The black SUV returned late that afternoon, parking directly in front of his driveway. Two men stepped out, Agent Harris and Agent Cole, and marched up to the door without hesitation. When Dean answered, his face pale and drawn, they wasted no time getting to the point. "You've caused quite a mess," Agent Harris said coldly, stepping inside without invitation. "Thanks to your reckless behavior, the entire program is at risk." Dean backed away, his hands trembling. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he stammered. "I was just following orders." "Orders?" Agent Cole sneered. "You think that excuse will save you now? Your incompetence has put countless lives in jeopardy, including yours." Karen appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed defiantly. "Leave him alone," she snapped. "He's done nothing wrong." Agent Harris turned to her, his expression darkening. "Mrs. Parker, I suggest you stay out of matters you don't understand. This is far beyond anything you're capable of handling." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but Dean placed a hand on her shoulder, silencing her. "Just tell me what you want," he said weakly, his voice barely audible. "We want cooperation," Agent Harris replied sharply. "Full access to your records, communications, and anything else related to this case, and you will publicly deny any involvement with the device found in the Johnsons' yard." "What if I refuse?" Dean asked, though he already knew the answer. Agent Cole smiled thinly. "Then we'll ensure you regret it." The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, suffocating and inescapable. Dean nodded reluctantly, knowing he had no other choice. As the agents left, Karen glared at him, tears streaming down her face. "How could you let them bully you like this?" she cried. "Fight back, Dean. For once in your life, stand up for yourself." "I can't," Dean whispered, sinking onto the couch. "If I do, they'll destroy us." That evening, Lisa and Marcus gathered in front of the TV to watch the latest coverage of their campaign. Protesters filled the screen, chanting slogans and holding signs. Reporters spoke passionately about the need for accountability, while politicians scrambled to distance themselves from the controversy. It was working. Their message was reaching people, inspiring action. But amidst the chaos, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was lurking just beneath the surface. She glanced at the wrapped device sitting on the table, its presence almost mocking her. What secrets did it hold? And what would happen when those secrets came to light? As if sensing her unease, Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're doing the right thing," he said firmly. "No matter what happens next, we've already made a difference." Lisa nodded, drawing strength from his words. Tomorrow they would hold a press conference presenting all the evidence they had gathered. It would be their chance to expose the truth, to show the world the extent of the injustice faced by families like theirs. For better or worse, there was no turning back now. The day of the press conference dawned gray and overcast, with heavy clouds hanging low in the sky. Lisa woke up early, her stomach churning with nerves. She glanced at Maya, who was still asleep in her bed, and felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about her family anymore. It was about every child, every parent, every person who had ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin or where they came from. Today they would take a stand. Marcus arrived shortly after sunrise, carrying boxes filled with printed flyers, documents, and copies of the photos of the mysterious device. "We're ready," he said confidently as he unloaded everything onto the dining table. "The venue is set up, the media outlets are on standby, and the crowd is already gathering." Lisa nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she helped organize the materials. "What if they try to shut us down?" she asked quietly. "What if those agents show up and stop us?" "They won't," Marcus replied firmly. "Not in front of hundreds of people. We've got too much momentum now, they can't silence all of us." Maya wandered into the room, yawning and rubbing her eyes. "Is today the big day?" she asked, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Yes, baby," Lisa said, kneeling down to hug her tightly. Today we tell everyone what happened and make sure no one else has to go through it. Maya smiled faintly but looked uncertain. Will the bad people be gone after this? Lisa hesitated, unsure how to answer. She didn't want to lie to her daughter, but she also didn't want to scare her. I hope so, she said finally. But even if they're not, we'll keep fighting until they are. By mid-morning, the park where the press conference was being held buzzed with activity. Dozens of reporters lined up with cameras and microphones, while activists and community members gathered behind them, holding signs and chanting slogans. A makeshift stage had been set up near the center, adorned with banners reading "Justice for All" and "Expose the Truth." Lisa stood backstage with Marcus, trying to calm her racing heart. Maya sat nearby, coloring quietly in a notebook someone had given her. Despite the chaos around them, Lisa felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in days, she wasn't alone. She had friends, allies, and an entire community standing beside her. When it was time to begin, Marcus stepped onto the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. What you're about to hear isn't just one story, it's a reflection of countless stories that have gone untold for far too long. The crowd fell silent, their attention fixed on him. He introduced Lisa, who walked out to a wave of applause. Her legs felt shaky, but she forced herself to stand tall, gripping the edges of the podium for support. My name is Lisa Johnson, she began, her voice trembling at first, but growing stronger with each word. And this is my daughter, Maya. 2 days ago, Maya was taken from a playground by a police officer who claimed she was involved in suspicious activity. No explanation. No evidence, just suspicion and prejudice. The crowd erupted in murmurs of disbelief and anger. Lisa paused, letting the weight of her words sink in before continuing. But this isn't just about racism or profiling. It's about something bigger, something darker. In our own backyard, we found this. She gestured to Marcus, who held up the metallic device wrapped in cloth. Carefully unwrapping it, he showed the object to the cameras, its strange symbols catching the light. Gasps rippled through the audience. This device was buried in our yard, Lisa continued. We believe it's part of a secret surveillance program targeting marginalized communities. Programs like these aren't just unethical. They're dangerous. They strip away our rights, our privacy, and our humanity. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back, determined to finish. My daughter is 8 years old. She deserves to grow up in a world where she feels safe, not watched, judged, or treated as a threat. That's why we're here today. To demand accountability, to demand justice, and to say enough is enough. The crowd erupted into cheers, chants of "Justice for Maya," echoing across the park. Reporters fired questions at Lisa and Marcus, their cameras flashing nonstop. For a moment, it felt like the tide was turning. Across town, Dean Parker watched, the live broadcast from his living room, his face pale and drawn. Karen sat beside him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Neither of them spoke as Lisa's words echoed through the room, accusing the system he had sworn to serve. You see now, don't you? Karen said bitterly when the segment ended. This isn't about following orders, it's about complicity. You're part of this, Dean, whether you meant to be or not. Dean buried his face in his hands, guilt washing over him in waves. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't. Deep down, he knew she was right. Before either of them could say more, there was another knock at the door. This time it wasn't the agents, it was 2 uniformed officers. When Dean answered, they informed him he was under arrest for misconduct and abuse of power. As they led him away in handcuffs, Karen stared after him, tears streaming down her face. In the days that followed, the fallout spread far beyond Chicago. The press conference went viral, sparking outrage nationwide. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal, while investigative journalists dug deeper into the secretive surveillance program. Pressure mounted on law enforcement, agencies to reform their practices and address systemic racism. For Lisa and Maya, life slowly began returning to normal, or as close to normal as possible. With Marcus's help, they relocated to a quieter neighborhood, hoping to start fresh. Though scars remained, Maya showed remarkable resilience, inspired by the outpouring of support from strangers who rallied to her side. As for Dean, he vanished from public view entirely. Rumors swirled that he was being held in a secret facility, interrogated about his role in the program. Others claimed he had fled the country to escape prosecution. No one knew for sure. Marcus reflected often on the cost of exposing the truth. While justice remained elusive, he found solace in knowing that people like Maya would never again be silenced or ignored. Change wouldn't come overnight, but the seeds had been planted, and that was enough.